Welcome back. Today we are going to be covering an article on the subject of sexual assault, or is it rape? Apparently there's a distinction to be made, because the assailant, or the attacker, is female, and the victim is also female, but then again, would the victim be male? No, the victim would. In any case, this is an interesting article because this is the second time this case has gone to court. So let's just dive right in, shall we? Ex-private schoolgirl screams, "I can't go back to jail," as she is found guilty of using a £20 sex toy and a blindfold to dupe her girlfriend into believing she was having sex with a man after a dramatic retrial. Straight off the bat, and something about this article already interests me, it's that the fact the word rape is completely omitted from the headline. Usually with sexual assaults, if a male is the assailant, it does have the word rape somewhere, but whenever it is a female attacker, it's always sexual assault, as if there is a difference between sexually assaulting and raping them. It's almost as if the media is trying to soften the impact of the retrial, which it's failed to do because it's rape. Even with a sex toy, it's still rape. Gail Newland broke down in the dock today as she was found guilty of a string of sexual assaults off a dramatic retrial granted last year following criticism of the judge's summing up in her 2015 court case. In the description below I have left a link to that particular summing up, which is 3 pages long. This time her legal team chose to focus more on the sexual history of a victim who slept with up to 19 men in the period after she went to police in 2013. Nice. In your one shot to try and avoid going to jail for a second time, you try to character assassinate the person you manipulated, who was so broken after you manipulated them that they just let anyone in as a coping mechanism for your deceit and, well, violating them. But the jury still found Newland guilty of sexual assault by using a prosthetic penis, and she faces jail again after being released from her 8-year term last year. So now, just before we continue, I think we should have a little look at the criteria for sexual assault. A person A commits an offence if he intentionally touches another person B, the touching is sexual, B does not consent to the touching, and A does not reasonably believe that B consents. 2. Whether a belief is reasonable is to be determined having regard to all the circumstances, including any steps A has taken to ascertain whether B consents. 3. Sections 75 and 76 apply to an offence under this section. 4. A person guilty of an offence under this section is liable, on summary conviction, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or a fine not exceeding the statutory maximum or both. B. On conviction on indictment, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years. Now for me, reading that, there is an obvious concern raised. There's no mention under these for items being used or manipulation when there is a female assailant or attacker or manipulator. So one has to wonder how on earth they managed to go with sexual assault when the criteria does not indicate it. And just to clarify, sections 75 and 76 are about consent, not about the use of toys in the bedroom. A former personal trainer pretended to be a half Filipino, half Latino man called Kai Fortune, and wore a fake penis to have sex up to 10 times with the young woman over 2 years. This astonishing deception was to quench her own bizarre sexual satisfaction, Manchester Crown Court heard. Even though this particular defendant is going back to prison and has committed a truly heinous crime, I do personally hope she gets a lot of help and medication for this deranged way of approaching people or indulging one's desires, because this could lead to people getting hurt. When you deceive someone in such a way, or you tell them you're something you're not, and then they find out the hard way, you are emotionally harming that person in such a way that they may not recover. They may not want to put themselves out there. They may not want to be with another person. They will close themselves off, and their coping mechanism could be a destructive one. And it would all be because of your selfish needs or wants. Today, the 27-year-old began sobbing when the jury delivered a majority guilty verdict of 11-1 on 3 counts out of 4 of sexual assault and yelled, "I can't go back to jail." The 3 counts she was convicted of related to the use of her prosthetic penis, the 4th she was cleared of did not. It's a shame I still can't find anything in the Sexual Offences Act 2003 that would indicate which parts that she's been charged with and been found guilty of. I had considered positions of trust, but there's no mention of it. And of course I had looked at rape, but yet again, no mention of it. Now, like earlier mentioned, I am quite happy this person's going back to jail, and it's more than likely she'll be given a similar term, or sentence, but have the original time she's served cut off from it. As long as she gets the help she needs, there's no real problem with her. My concern is that the person she has violated has been put through this ordeal for several years, and for what? To be character assassinated and another guilty verdict for somebody who clearly doesn't feel remorse for what they did. When she was told by the judge she would have to sign the sex offender register, she repeatedly said, "Sex offender?" So now we have another opportunity to look at the Sexual Offences Act 2003 and the section regarding the sex offenders register. One of my big issues with all of this, the entire thing, is how gendered it is. I know some will now say, and I'm going to get these comments, he doesn't mean it's being gendered, even though the majority of all these criteria says he. This is one of those times where I would argue that using not so obviously gendered language would be beneficial to those who look at it like myself to stop us complaining. But then again, you don't accept certain rapes can happen, and yet they do, and they cause people to lose their lives, their livelihoods. Why? Because they've been violated, but you don't recognize it. Why? Because the Sexual Offences Act 2003 is gendered. I'm glad this person has to sign this, because people need to know there is a master manipulator out there who will play the long game for that one little kick, that buzz, which will inevitably lead to her going back to prison again. Newland, who will be sentenced at a later date, had her conviction for sexual assault quashed last year after appeal judges said it was unsafe, and she was released from prison after being jailed in 2015 for 8 years. With all the reading I've done for this, I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about when they say unsafe. Miss Newland insisted her lover knew she was a woman all along. The victim said she was in love and wanted to marry him. She even agreed to requests to cover her eyes during sex and also while watching films, eating dinner or sunbathing. I will admit this did have me wondering just how broken of a person or how easily manipulated that person was to believe somebody or to agree to the criteria presented just so they could have sex with someone they believed was a man but was in fact a woman. Now, when I was originally writing for this, I had considered if there was any comparison to some of the other arguments presented by other people with regard to sexual preferences. Those that would say if you don't want to sleep with somebody who's trans, you're transphobic. If you don't want to sleep with a certain race, you're racist. Or you're heterophobic if you're gay and don't want to sleep with a straight person. I'm just going to leave that point hanging because I think the point is pretty clear. The student who cannot be named admitted she slept with a man several weeks after she made her initial police complaint in the summer of 2013, and 19 in total during that time, but insisted it was a reckless reaction to learning the man she thought she might spend the rest of her life with was a woman who deceived her. Let's put to the side the fact that I'm astonished she didn't get pregnant. I am somewhat impressed that she didn't go down the route of drugs, alcohol, or excessive eating as a coping mechanism. It is unsurprising that the defendant's legal team would use this as a tactic to try and devalue what she experienced for what she had gone through while being in a relationship that wasn't what she believed it to be. And all the efforts that the defendant went through to maintain this facade, knowing what this person wanted, is astonishing that she still believed that she was innocent in some way. Like when she cried she can't go back to jail. Are you serious? Look at what you did objectively, which I doubt you could do, and tell anyone you don't belong in jail with a burly diesel dyke telling you to pick up the soap. Newland's mother, Julie, wept in the upstairs public gallery of the court, while her father, Brian, who has also attended the trial throughout, was not in the courtroom for verdicts. The retrial judge told Newland he was taking the exceptional course of granting bail, but that this was no indicator of the sentence she was likely to receive. Judge David Stockdale QC said, "On the contrary, you must understand now that the overwhelming likelihood is that on July 20th, you will receive a significant immediate custodial sentence. You should be in no doubt about that at all." Aside from the fact I am somewhat surprised she wasn't immediately sentenced to the original sentence given to her, which I think would be fair. This whole article raises many questions about the Sexual Offences Act, like for example which parts she's been charged with. If she's going down for sexual assault and yet there is no mention of use of a dildo, coercion, manipulation, and so on, then how has she been charged with it? It can't be that she was charged with rape, because the only mention of females getting charged anywhere near to it is when they commission a gang rape. And I had considered it to be positions of trust, but again there is no mention of it. And I support any of those .gov petitions that go up every single time asking for the definition of rape to be changed, which for those who are interested is the topic of my next video. I held off on the particular video I'm going to be doing next because I wanted the conclusion of that story to come out first before I committed to making the video. Anyway, thank you all for listening.